Hello and welcome to the topic Ruling the Countryside, Chapter 3, Class 8 History. We have studied in the chapter 2 how did the company enter into our country, and slowly, in a phase by phase, systematically they have converted their land of trade to land of territory. They have been expanding, and slowly now the company has accepted the right of Diwani, that is the right to collect the tax from the Bengal. So Robert Clive, after receiving the right to collect the Diwani or the revenue or the tax, he has utilized this opportunity together with Warren Hastings. He was one of the key men in the early figures of the British in creating these kind of reforms in India. The modern historians have criticized him for the atrocities and cruelties, but still his aim behind taxation was different. This gave the power to the East India Company, that is, to collect the tax from Bengal on August 12th, 1765, by the then Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. That's how the company became the chief financial administrator of the territory of Bengal. This gave the right to collect the tax. This system is called as the permanent settlement system. So this is otherwise called as Zamindari system. Zameen is the land, Dari is the holding. It was introduced in the provinces of Bengal, Bihar, Orissa and Varanasi, also known as this as a permanent settlement system, because once and for all the tax to be paid was fixed. Zamindars were recognized as the owners of the lands. Zamindars were given the rights to collect the rent from the peasants. So this gave the power to the company, that the officials understood one important aspect, that they can expand their territories, they can expand their rights to collect the tax. They understood the importance of those who had ruled the countryside in the past and had enjoyed authority, privilege and prestige. The company wanted to be careful not to annoy those people, otherwise they will lose their opportunity to collect the tax. The problems of the revenue, excessive revenue being collected, as this money was fetching, the gold inflow which used to come from Britain slowly stopped. They used this money to maintain their factories, that is the trade centers, to take care of their soldiers, to take care of their trade businesses and use for their flourishing here. So the revenue officials, they wanted to increase the income from the land, and hence they fixed very high revenue demand. The peasants were not able to pay the revenue. The riots or the peasants, they fled the countryside and villages and became deserted in those regions. So when they left the villages, they became empty. They were fed up by paying the taxes. They wanted to move to a place where they are free from this payment. This is the man, Lord Charles Cornwallis. So the permanent settlement of Bengal was brought into effect by the East India Company, and this was headed by the then Governor General Lord Cornwallis in 1793. This was basically an agreement between the company and the zamindars to fix the land revenue. The permanent settlement system aimed to take some steps to improve the agriculture by improving investment in the land. The permanent settlement system was introduced in 1793. If investment is made on the land, then they will get better returns. According to this, the Rajas and the Talukdars were recognized as the Zamindars, the landowners, and they were given the responsibility of collecting the revenue or the tax from the peasants and give to the British. The features say that the Zamindari system or Istamaria patron Lord Cornwallis, he has introduced this. The areas were Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, Uttar Pradesh, northern Karnataka. Total area of land, agricultural land was 19%. Around 1/10 part will remain with the Zamindar for his fulfillment of needs. What were the problems of the permanent settlement system? The revenue was fixed at such a high level that the zamindars found it difficult to pay. The zamindar who failed to pay the revenue, he lost his zamindari or landholding system. Hence, the zamindars, the talukdars, and the rajas were not investing in the improvement of land because they were compelled to pay the tax. So they forgot that they need to pay on the improvement on the land and to fetch returns from it. This led to the problem of the permanent settlement system. This situation changed by the first decade of the 19th century. There was the price rise and the expansion in cultivation. There was a need for agricultural growth because there was high demand. The income of the zamindars increased, but it did not result in any gain for the company because of fixed revenue system. Zamindars preferred to earn as much profit as they could because they were just happy to lease out the land to the tenants, and in return they will be getting the tax. The problems faced by the Bengal province, the growth of the problems for the common people. They were facing deep crisis. The artisans were being forced to sell their goods to the company at very low prices, and hence most of them were deserting their villages. They left their villages in search of better opportunities. The peasants were not able to pay the dues. They were in debt. The production by the artisans declined, and the farm production also declined. By 1770, a terrible famine hit Bengal. It killed nearly 10 million people. This is the man who has introduced the Mahalwari system. Mahal means village. This is Lord Holt Mackenzie. In 1822, the Mahalwari system was introduced by him. It gave autonomy to the tax collector. The Mahalwari system was introduced because the zamindars failed to do their job and the company was not satisfied. The village was now called as Mahal, and hence this system was called as Mahalwari system. It was also decided to revise the revenue demand periodically. Previously it was fixed, and when there is agricultural failure, when there is no productivity, still the farmer, the peasant was compelled to pay. And if the zamindar is not paying the tax to the British, he lost his zamindari system. So now periodically the tax payment system is revised, and the village headman was now given the responsibility for the collection of revenue. The features of this Mahalwari system, it was introduced by Holt Mackenzie in 1822. The revenue collection, it depended on the production now, and the areas included were South India, Awadh, Middle India, Punjab. Total area, agricultural land 30%. Tax amount was flexible, not fixed. Next type of revenue system which was introduced was by Sri, we should not say Sri, it is Lord Thomas. Munro. The Ryoti system. In this system, the peasants or the cultivators were regarded as the owners of the land. They had the ownership of rights. They could sell or mortgage or gift the land. The taxes were directly collected by the government from the peasants. The rates were 50% in dry land and 60% in wetland. The major source now is the indigo. This is a coloring substance. This cultivation was imposed on the farmers. The company looked for ways to expand the area under cultivation of indigo. With the introduction of industrialization, many industries came into existence from the period from 1780 to 1820, and there was demand for the raw material. And fine cotton was available in India, and they needed the dye or the coloring substance, and that coloring substance was indigo. Only about 30% of indigo imported to Britain in 1788 was from India. So it is approximately one third of their total requisition fulfilled by India. The figure went up to the 95% by 1810. So how could the agricultural production change in Britain? We can see. The people from India were compelled to cultivate indigo, and that's how the production increased from 30% to 95%. Many people from Scotland, England came to India and became planters. They made Indians cultivate, they gave them loans, advances, and they took them here for cultivation. The company and the banks were giving loans to the indigo cultivators at that time. So the company looked for ways to expand this area. They just wanted to increase the cultivation of indigo so that fulfills their demand. So there was high demand for indigo. The Indian indigo was being used in Italy, France, Britain. The price of indigo was very high. Hence, a small amount of Indian indigo could reach a European market. The other competitor of indigo was wood. Wood is another plant which is used for making violet and other blue dyes, close color combination to blue. The wood producers in Europe were worried by the competition from indigo. They could not sustain, and hence they were pressurized. They were pressurized to compete. So they in turn pressurized their governments to ban the import of indigo, the coloring substance. But indigo was preferred by the cloth dyers. They were using it because the color had very good quality. Indigo cultivation was started by the French in St Domingo in the Caribbean islands. The Portuguese began indigo cultivation in Brazil. British started in Jamaica. Spanish started in Venezuela. The indigo plantation were also started in many parts of the Northern America. Now, industrialization began in Europe and cotton production expanded in many folds. There was a huge demand. This created enormous demand for the cloth dyes. Now, the crops for Europe, which traveled from India, the company was trying to expand the cultivation of opium and indigo. Opium is a narcotic, it's a drug. It causes drowsiness, sleep. They force the cultivators to produce other crops also, like jute, tea, sugarcane, cotton, wheat, rice, and they have to be supplied to Europe. This is indigo, the crop of indigo. This is the British Indigo factory in India. You can see the planters. They had to toil hard, and that's a print of cotton and the silk, the kalankari print. This is Thomas Munro, governor of Madras, who introduced the Ryoti system. He served with his regiment during the hard fought war against Hyder Ali in 1780 and 83, serving under his older and distant relation, Major Sir Hector Munro, 8th of the noble. This man introduced the Ryoti system. The Munro System, on his name, it is called as the Munro System. This system was otherwise called as the Ryoti System, and this was developed by Sir Thomas Munro. This system was gradually implemented all over the South India. There were no traditional zamindars in the South India. Hence, the settlement had to be directly made with the cultivators themselves, that is, the ryots or the peasants. The ryots had been tilling the land for generations. Their fields were carefully surveyed to make the revenue assessment based on the fertility. Under the Ryoti system, the indigo cultivation was done by the ryots. The planters made the ryots to sign a contract, an agreement or satta. That agreement compelled them to pay the revenue. Sometimes they pressurized the village headmen to sign the contract on behalf of the ryots. Now the village headmen had to take the initiation. After signing the contract, the ryots got cash advances from the planters, and then they can start the cultivation. But after taking the loan, the ryot was committed to grow the indigo on at least 25% of his land holding. The seeds and the drills were provided by the planter. The cultivators prepared the soil, sowed the seeds, and looked after the crop. But after the planters bought indigo at low prices, and hence the riots were always in debt trap. Indigo required fertile soil. After cultivating that, it is unsuitable for any other food crops. So it is a big challenge for the cultivators. And because of lack of capital, they had to borrow the money from the planters and they start cultivation. After it is being cultivated, the crop is not given a fair price. Very less amount is paid to the cultivators and they are exploited. This is the feature introduced by Thomas Munro, Captain Alexander Reed, and Captain Alexander Reed in the areas of Tamil Nadu, Madras, Mumbai, Assam. 51% direct tax revenue, 33% to 55%. So now this problem led with niche cultivation. Indigo could only be cultivated on fertile lands. Niche is real, but these areas were densely populated and hence only small plots could be acquired. This made it difficult to expand the area under niche cultivation or fertile land indigo cultivation. They attempted to lease the land around the indigo factory. While doing so, they evicted the peasants from that area. They made them to move, vacate the regions, and this was the cause of conflict between the planters and the peasants. This created tension. The large plantation required a large number of workers. Work at indigo plantation coincided with the time when the peasants were busy with rice cultivation. They had to forego the food crop and then concentrate on the indigo cultivation. Hence, mobilizing the labor for indigo cultivation was a difficult task. This is the first English ship sailed towards India, 18th century. These all ships were carrying the required amount of material from India. This is the wood, which is a competitor to indigo. And the Eastern countries and European countries, they cultivated this. They were not able to face the challenge given by indigo. Wood is another plant which is used by the uh, people who are using it for coloring and dyeing. It is very close to the blue and violet colors and dyes. It's a plant which is being cultivated in the temperate zones and hence was easily available in Europe. Wood was grown in northern Italy, southern France, and in parts of Germany, Britain. The wood producers in Europe were worried. They could not withstand the competition which indigo challenged them, and hence they pressurized their governments to ban the import of indigo and use wood for the dyeing or coloring. The peasants now started to rebel. Many of the peasants in the villages, even the headmen, they mobilized the indigo peasants, and all of them, they were against these kind of atrocities which were imposed on them. The headmen, the peasants, everyone was angry because they had been forced to sign the contract. If they don't fulfill the contract, they were pressurized, they were brutally tortured. Some of the zamindars were angry with the increasing power of the planters, and they were being forced to give them land on long leases. It extended to years. So, some of the zamindars also supported the villagers in their revolt against the indigo planters. This rebellion was a game changer for the British. The rebellion prompted the government to bring in the military to safeguard the planters and to set up the Indigo Commission to investigate into the aspects of the situation. How were the peasants exploited? What were the terms and conditions? What is the percentage of revenue received? And how were the people compelled to pay? All this investigation was done. After the Blue Rebellion, the indigo production in Bengal collapsed and indigo planters shifted their base to Bihar. How did the British react and what happened in Bihar? We will study. The possibility of another popular rebellion took place. The lieutenant governor toured the region in the winter of 1859. This was seen as a sign of sympathy to the riots, but it is not so. They began to believe that the British government would support them in their struggle. Intellectuals from Calcutta rushed to the Indigo districts. They began writing about the misery and the torture and how they toiled and the horrors which they faced to make their living and face the Indigo system. The government called in the military to protect the planters. The Indigo Commission was set up to look into and inquire into the system of indigo production. The commission held the planters guilty. It asked the Royals to fulfill their existing obligations. The signed contracts they will fulfill, and they need not sign any new contract. They were free to cultivate whatever they wished, food crops, cash crops, anything, but not indigo. So, The commission did its job, and after the revolt, the indigo production collapsed in Bengal. The planters now shifted their operation to Bihar. Discovery of synthetic dyes, other dyes in comparison to indigo in the late 19th century, this severely affected the business. But the planters managed to expand the production. But it was only when Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation, when he came from South Africa, he having achieved many achievements there and most fruitful results, the the Champaran cultivators looked at Gandhiji with a lot of expectations. Gandhiji could understand the plight and the condition of the indigo farmers in Champaran, and he graced the occasion, the Champaran Satyagraha, the most famous satyagraha of the indigo cultivators who struggled to express their helplessness and how they were compelled to cultivate the indigo, the coloring substance. This is a vision from London. All these people had great demand for the Indian cloth, Indian color, because it was of very good quality. Indian factory, indigo preparation, where the labor toil hard, their cost for the labor which is paid is too low. This presentation was made by my student and my own daughter Anushka Sangi, and I take delight in explaining this chapter. Thank you so much for listening. Please text me your comments, your expectations. Thank you so much.